This is Alfred Hitchcock speaking. In the past, but this time I would like you to see a different one. The difference lies in the fact that this is a true story, every word of it, and yet it contains elements that are stranger than all the fiction that has gone into many of the thrillers that I have made before.
All right, hello everybody. How do I sound out there? Coming to you from Southeast Texas, where it is hotter than the surface of the sun. But yes, this will be a usual thing at 8:30 Central Time every Sunday night. Going to get consistent, and definitely starting on time is a big part of that. So I just played a portion of Alfred Hitchcock, that episode, of course, starring Henry Fonda. And what's interesting about that episode was that he says, "This is Alfred Hitchcock speaking." So, thank you to the guy that sent me that. I can't not remember his name, but if you put a comment in the comment section, I'll give you credit for that. I can't remember the gentleman that sent me that, but I'd never seen it before. Where Alfred Hitchcock says, "This is Alfred Hitchcock speaking." So that is likely that's where the Zodiac got this is the Zodiac speaking from that as anything else. I mean, I know that some of the Superman comics say that, or sorry, the Batman comics where it says this is the Batman speaking, and it could have been both. But to see it in a 1956 Hitchcock show tells me that is highly likely where the Zodiac picked up this is the Zodiac speaking from that particular Alfred Hitchcock. And I think he might have done that on a few. I don't think he did that on every single uh, Alfred Hitchcock episode. Of course, there was many of those, but that was one of them. So I think that is something people should look at. I think that's another. Oh, good. Thanks, Patty. I think that's just another great find of where that could have come from. And then I saw this today, and I thought it was pretty funny. I'm gonna roll some of these slides. I'm going to go back to the Halloween card. I want to mention something about that. But I saw this picture. It was on Facebook. It was like a Van Halen group. I was a pretty big Van Halen fan. Not the biggest, but, I was a Van Halen fan as much as anybody else. Now that I'm just turned 54 years old, but, I can remember being just like anyone, love Van Halen. But this is an old 1974 picture of Eddie Van Halen. And this is before Michael Anthony was in the band. So it was pretty early. And you can kind of catch a little glimpse. I mean, there's something obscuring this picture. I don't know what it is, but you can kind of catch a glimpse of David Lee Roth's face. And this could be like, I don't know, rehearsing it in one of their houses or something like that. But someone pointed out who the woman is on that in the background. And I was surprised that this one guy guessed it, and people were like, no, you're wrong. That's Farrah Fawcett or something like that. But it's not. And I'm not going to make you guess, but that is that's Maria what's her name? Maria Muldoon or whatever. I can't remember her last name. No, Moldauer. Maria Moldauer. Of course, the woman who sings "Midnight at the Oasis," one of Art Bell's favorite songs. So I thought that's pretty funny. Watching, look at this old picture of Eddie Van Halen with picture of Marie Moldauer. I know I'm pronouncing that right. I just couldn't remember how. I wanted to make sure I got it right, but it's Moldauer. I think is the right way to say her name. That sung "Midnight at the Oasis," which was one of Art Bell's probably 4 go-to songs when he was on Coast to Coast AM. Maybe before Art was using that, I don't know, but definitely on Coast to Coast, he played that song a lot. So I thought that's pretty funny that someone had a poster up of her where Eddie Van Halen or early Van Halen practicing going on, where Eddie's playing a Les Paul Gold Top that his father bought him. So not very, it's a rare picture. You don't see Eddie Van Halen playing a Les Paul too much. But that's one of them. No, you have not missed too much at all. Yes, we are getting old. Yeah, we are getting very old. It's I'm too old to be this hot. Solar flare, that's fitting. As hot as it is here in Texas, it's ridiculous. I love the Beatles and the Doors. Zeppelin, I like Led Zeppelin. I'm not a crazy Zeppelin fan, but I like it. I like Robert Plant solo stuff probably a little better. Hey, Anthony, how are you? I love Midnight at the Oasis. I'm saying it right? It's I'm saying her name right? Maria Moldauer, isn't it? Like Dower, Maria Moldauer. And I think her husband was in a band. Uh, she married him. That's where her name came from. She kept the name after they got divorced. His name was, I can't remember his first name. Who was the dude that sang? I can't remember anything tonight. I get past 8 o'clock and start forgetting everything. Maybe it's not a good time or not. Who's the guy that sang the Welcome Back Cotter song? I can't remember. What's the guy's name? He was in the Loving Spoonful, and he sang the Welcome Back Cotter theme. He was in a band with Maria Muldaur and her husband, Jeff. That's right. See, I like it when everybody's close to the same age. Thanks, Anthony. You nailed that. Yes, Jeff was her husband. And what was it? And then they were in the, oh, God, the Jeff Muldaur was in the band with, yes, John Sebastian. Yeah, man, everybody's around the same age. I even know that with John Sebastian, right? He sang the Welcome Back Cotter theme. John Sebastian was in a band with Jeff Muldaur and Maria. And then I guess after Love and Spoonful, John Sebastian did that record with I think it was I don't know what the B side. Well, I think maybe the B side was a Welcome Back Cotter theme, and then there was an A side to that 45. That's going way back, but yeah, it's a great song. I just thought that was funny to see a picture of her behind Eddie Van Halen of all people. So let me go over to this question. Let me take Eddie down. Was Don Cheney's mention of ALA's ball of wax an attempt to establish plausible? I thought, yeah. Oh, of course it was. If his prints were found on something, absolutely. Yes. You're older and it's hotter. Yes, you are my older sister. So yeah, it's. I think it was higher than 101 here today, Jen. I was melting. Yes, that's what started for me. The ball of paraffin wax that Don Cheney said he gladly gave his friend Arthur Lee Allen his thumbprint in the ball of paraffin wax, and then of course the whole DNA thing, where Cheney said he would lick his friends' stamps for him or letters. And considering the timing of that being, if you give Don Cheney his due date of January 1st, 1969, you'd have to consider the fact that Allen left those letters unmailed for a good 6 months, entire 6 months, because the first Zodiac letters don't show up until actually late July 1969. So the letters would have, even if you give Cheney New Year's Day 1969, the letters that he's talking about licking stamps for are already 7 months old. So I guess Allen just let them stack up until he decided to put them in the mail, which is pretty ridiculous. Yeah, 103. That's crazy. That is nuts. You're in Laredo, I'm not, Paul? Man, 109. That is hot. I've never been to Laredo. Being from Houston, you think I would have made it down there at least once. I had a good friend from Nuevo Laredo, part of the Longoria family of Nuevo Laredo, pretty well-known family back in the day. He was part of that clan down there. It's pretty interesting upbringing he had. Surprised Don didn't use ALA comb as well. His also ALA was pretty bald. Yes. Yeah, Allen was definitely pretty bald by that time, by the time that the sketch was done. And that brings up something else. You know, Cheney had a widow's peak. That's one thing that I'm glad I have a picture of Cheney from the mid 70s, because it shows you how much if he wanted to, how much he could grow his hair out. Even with the distinct widow's peak, when he would grow his hair out, he had quite a bit. I mean, he could definitely grow out the middle and the sides. So I'm glad I have that photo of him from the mid 70s. It shows you Allen couldn't have done that. No way. So I wanted to read something going back to the Halloween card that comes from Such Bad Handling on Reddit, and I won't say who that is. Of course, I know who that is. It's not me, but somebody I know that was analyzing the located original Halloween card, which hopefully I can find it here among all this. Man, how much stuff did I save up here? A little too much. But there was some good comments. If I can find where I put it. See, I'm using my phone, so I'm saving paper. Let me see. Ah, here it is. So this is from Reddit, from Such Bad Handling, and it says, I'm a graphic designer and have experience in printing and image reproduction. My professional take is that the card Zodiac sent was indeed the same green card. So that's interesting. So it wasn't the one that looks black or wherever that came from. He's saying that he thinks the original card did look just like this one that someone bought on eBay. I think it was 2 weeks ago. The original photocopies would have been in black and white. The first color copier was not made until 1973. Law enforcement at the time should have taken a color photo, though, next to a ruler to show size scale. So that might confirm if we could find the original evidence photos. I don't know where those are, but hey, Richard Grinnell, I know when you watch, I know it's late over in England, but when you're watching this, Richard, email me about that. Like what's the closest thing we have to the source of a photograph of the Halloween card? I asked Paul Avery's daughter about it. Of course, you know, the Halloween card was sent to her father, and she remembers getting a first generation copy of it. Back when it happened, she got one of the original first generation Xerox copies of it. But of course, the police took possession of the first Halloween card. But she remembers seeing like a first generation copy of it, which would have been cool. But that would have been black and white, like this is saying here. And he put Zodiac added 14 on palm of skeleton's right hand, something in the right pupil of the skeleton. Yeah, I think that looks like a T or something in the right pupil of the skeleton. A die cut cardboard pumpkin decoration pasted over the, I won't say it, private area. Of course, on the Zodiac's card has the huge pumpkin there. I should have put up a picture of the original. He added peekaboo, you are doomed around the hole in the tree. Boo in 4-teen. Die cut cardboard skeleton and dungeon prisoner posed. Slave anyone? So that's going back to, of course, the Zodiac talked about slaves in the afterlife, slaves in paradise. But talking about the skeleton on the inside of the card is being posed like it had like chains around it in a medieval dungeon. Red or orange mask on interior die cut skeleton. 3 different symbols: classic Zodiac, cross, circle Z, and the flying F cattle brand. We know, what that is. It looks like the kind of a VF spread out with the 2 things from that's from the Red Rider Touring book. It has that similar symbol, and I found a symbol almost exactly like it, and the in an Indian tribe that was in and around Bakersfield, California, and one of their symbols looks just like that symbol. By fire, by knife, by gun, by rope, slave's paradise cross arrangement. If you look closely at the interior of the card, you can see the texture and a blue color coming through some areas. These appear more purple in hue in the reproductions we have seen. I highly doubt that this particular card was popular enough to warrant multiple variations. I personally have never seen 2 color variations of the same greeting card unless they were small batch limited edition art prints. So that's interesting that he thinks that the original Halloween card looked just like this with the green. I don't know if we'll ever know that, but Richard, or if anybody else knows what the original card looked like from that was sent to Paul Avery. I don't know if they had 2 versions, but he's saying is there's only one version, and he thinks the original is just like this. He thinks the original was that green. And here's some. I want to go back to this because there was some other cards from the same company. See, this is what people think, and I know he thinks that the skeleton on the inside of the card was just a paste, and this is from the Gibson greeting card company as well that made the Halloween card. Of course, this is bigger. It's one of these bigger skeletons. It would have been too big to put in the card, but that it could have been just a cutout and not drawn by the Zodiac. And here's some more. I think these are Gibsons as well. You see Missing You on Halloween. but they're all pretty, consistent with this orange and stuff. So that's interesting that the original would have been in that green because no one's heard it before. Oh, I love this. I love questions like this. If you could choose one case to be solved with irrefutable evidence, which would it be, Zodiac or DB Cooper? You can only choose one uh, for everyone. Oh, I'd have to go with Zodiac just because there's gonna be stuff in there that we can't explain, and because I know who DB Cooper was, and I say that with full confidence. I'm gonna go with uh, who the half of Fifth Special Forces in Vietnam said was DB Cooper, and it's just hard to get off of that. Once you talk to enough of those guys from Vietnam, you begin to believe it like they do. So I'm going to go with Zodiac because there's just some things, there's some anomalies that will just, I'd love to know. And if the irrefutable evidence was be how, why was it all four canonical crimes? Were any of the non-canonical crimes Zodiac crimes? So definitely Zodiac because I have so much confidence in who DB Cooper was. I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know if we know who bought the card. I'm gonna try to look it up. Somebody said they ended the auction early and sold it, but I don't know if that was a joke or not. But I'd like to know. But heads up on whoever was looking for it and found it. Yeah, Zodiac for sure. And because Cooper didn't kill anybody. Oh, the audio's kind of choppy. Let me try this. How's it now? I agree with that 100% right there. Let me try to fix the audio. Hey, Tony. Been a while. Yeah, you can accept the offer and close the auction. You're right, Tony. Glad you're feeling better, by the way. So the audio's fine now? Good. So there's another Gibson from your secret pal. I think that phrase was pretty popular back then. A Christmas message from your secret pal. That's kind of weird for a Christmas card. I mean, I could kind of see Halloween because you're trying to spook somebody. But on a Christmas card, I think this is Gibson as well, a vintage a Gibson greeting card. But why would you put your secret pal at Christmas time? That's just kind of weird. That's right, Pedro. No one else could have done it. And none of these guys, guys in special force, there's the guys that didn't even like him will tell you he's DB Cooper. So that's kind of hard to refute, especially Billy Wall, guy that had Osama bin Laden, so close to Osama bin Laden, he could have killed him 4 different ways, he told me. Fully believes it's Braden. Hard to go against a guy like Billy Wall, top special forces legend of all time. No one even close. So this guy wrote this comment. How many people here think Don Chaney lied his ass off about Arthur Lee Allen? I honestly think he made up all the incriminating statements he told police because he had something against Arthur. And that is one reason ALA has remained such a prime suspect in a lot of people's minds. Without Don's statement, Arthur as a suspect doesn't look so good. He lied, and that's been very damaging to the investigation. Well, you got that part right. His lying or bringing Arthur Lee Allen forward changed the investigation forever because so many of those police, not just Dave Tosky, but so many, SFPD, Vallejo, they all were so convinced it was Allen. And even when some things weren't lining up for Allen, they just couldn't let it go. And there's a lot of those guys still around today that remember those times, or friends of some of the officers like Bauer, still believed it was Arthur Lee Allen. So why is that? Why would, if Don Chaney's doing that because he has something against Arthur, something against him, why was he doing it with such vigor so many years after Arthur Lee Allen's death? If it was just because he's mad at the guy, you think he could let it go after he's dead. Okay, Allen had been dead a long time before Don Chaney sat down and did a little documentary called His Name Was Arthur Lee Allen. And before the interview with who, he could have just let it go, but he didn't. He kept going, stronger than ever. after the man is long dead. So if he's just got something against him, he should have just faded off into the sunset and said, "I'm not going to do your documentary because the continental breakfast and it's not enough to behoove me to come do your show, or the lukewarm coffee at the day's end." So that just doesn't work. The sort the guy doesn't work. There's so many more pieces going on. You just have to dig into it, which we do here. That's the whole purpose of the show. But that being sore at the guy doesn't cover it. Being sore at the guy for an incident that allegedly happened in 1967 doesn't cover bringing him forward as the most notorious serial killer that ever roamed the United States in 1971. You think a few years would have cooled him off a little bit, but the audio's cracking. Ugh. I don't know why it does that. Hold on. Oh, yeah, he had a whole lot to hide. I think it's because I tried to. Let me close this. 40 years in 2007. Yeah, that's a long time, Tony. Let me. I'm trying to close some of this stuff to make the audio better. Is it good now? Okay. Maybe I hope I fixed it. So I'll go back over if there's anything I missed. Okay, so this is one of the main things I was going to talk about in the main focus of the show. And this stuff comes from Stefan Nyberg, who's found some great stuff. And Stefan, I love all the stuff that you dig up because, I mean, just he finds some really interesting things. And this is one of his, is the layout of the Zodiac crimes plus the cross circle over Mount Diablo is the star alignment for the Zodiac sign Cancer. And you can see these are the different Zodiac signs, but Cancer lines up like this. Here's the different names of the stars that make up Cancer, which of course is June 21st to July 22nd. And he thinks that the Zodiac love the number 4 and things lining up before. And you can kind of see on this map on the right-hand side. I need to blow it up so I can look at it a little better. You see coming out of Lake Berryessa, you're going down here to Lake Herman Road, Blue Rock Springs Park, and then you go down to the right for Mount Diablo, which of course was the compass rose the Zodiac drew over Mount Diablo, and then left going into the city of San Francisco to the Presidio where the Paul Stein attack was. So you can see this might have gotten cut off, but this is the alignment for Cancer in the night sky. And Stefan's thinking this is somebody that knew celestial navigation. And the first time I ever heard celestial navigation being applied to the Zodiac Killer case was Zodiac Revisited by Michael Cole. Before Michael Cole's 3-book trilogy came out, he spoke a lot about the Zodiac being influenced by celestial navigation and having celestial navigation training, which is how to navigate by the stars, knowing where the stars were on the horizon and knowing how to do what they call dead reckoning, where you could pinpoint a certain spot in the sky and navigate a ship or airplane. Of course, Don Chaney trained as a navigator on Harlingen Air Force Base, and he had celestial navigation. They called it night cell. They also had day cell, daytime celestial navigation. Of course, it's hard to see stars at night, but they did. They had daytime celestial navigation, and more important was night cell, nighttime celestial navigation. But the first time I ever heard that applied to the case was Michael Cole, because he had a blog called Zodiac Revisited, the same name of his 3-book series that came out later, because he worked years on those books and they're great. Highly recommend Michael Cole's 3 books. And Stefan, I don't know if you've read Michael Cole's books, 3-book series yet, but you absolutely got to read them. I don't agree with everything Michael Cole says, because I think he's a big believer that the Zodiac committed all the non-canonical crimes with the exception of the Ray Davis murder in 1962, the cab driver. But all the others, I think he's pretty firm believer that Sherry Joe Bates is Zodiac, and of course Donna Lass. I'm not confident in those at all, but it's kind of splitting hairs. But I think a lot of the stuff that Cole says is right on the money. Why the Zodiac targeted certain places at on certain dates, because Michael Cole believes he was trying to line up certain solstices, and he was trying to get his, using the time that he had, either a weekend, because it looked like he was employed full time, I think it is, but that he was trying to get close to these dates for a particular reason, because they were lining up the stars. Like, this is one of the things that he was trying to do with the radians, with the compass rose over Mount Diablo, which of course, let's put that up right there. You can see that's the Phillips 66 map on the right. You can see the compass rose, and it says is to be set to magnetic north. Of course, this is navigation. This is somebody that's had some navigation training. This is what this is. This is celestial navigation. Nicole points that out. And it's interesting that Stefan picks up on it too, because the average person in the Navy or even Air Force is not going to have specific training in celestial navigation, where you have to be able to point the stars out. You have to find them on a map. Really, some of them are easy and some of them are hard from what I read, how to pick these stars out and how to navigate by using the stars is not something every Tom, Dick, and Harry would have known how to do back when this stuff was created. Now, the map on the left is that shows Mount Diablo. I just drew the cross circle over the top of Mount Diablo like Zodiac did on the right. But here on the top left, that's where Don Cheney lived in 1967. He lived in downtown San Francisco on Day Street in 65 and most of 66. But at some point, he moves out to Concord, not too far from his pal Arthur Lee Allen in Vallejo. But you can see how close Cheney was living. He lived on Halifax Way. Before he moves to Pomona in 1969. But you see how close that is. That's like 4 miles away from Mount Diablo. He lived on Halifax Way. So, of course, he would have been, it's just a point of interest there. But he would have lived, where he could basically see Mount Diablo every day, as close as he lived to it. So I want to read this from Michael Cole. I've got so many of these in here. Is the audio still breaking up? Here's one I want to read. This came from the Harlingen yearbook, the Harlingen Air Force Base yearbook, called DR Ahead, page 8. The story behind the star charts. It says, shooting the stars was a skill we early navigators were good at. Today's COSs don't get the satisfaction of plotting a perfect 3-star fix on a navigation chart. Some were not even born when sextants began disappearing from airplanes. A sextant is a device used to line up the stars. I think I've got a picture of a sextant. There's a sextant right there. It says my eyes are getting bad. A sextant is a doubly reflecting navigation instrument that measures angular distance between two visible objects. The primary use of a sextant is to measure the angle between an astronomical object and the horizon for the purposes of celestial navigation. So, very important. I mean, this isn't something that just some young kid's going to read a book in high school and know how to do. This takes years of training. It says the hardest part of getting a good star shot was identifying the correct star. Air Force Manual 51 through 40, Air Navigation Volume 3 contains simple drawings of 35 of 42 navigational stars. Figure 1 shows the illustration from the star. I don't know how to pronounce this. It's D-U-B-H-E. You may remember D-U-B-H-E. It was the one that was easy to find on the lip of the Big Dipper. The joke during night cell classes at James Connolly, that's another Air Force base, was that you could get a quick fix by using D-E-N-E-B. D-U-B-H-E, I won't even try to pronounce that, and Dallas. I guess there was a star called Dallas. The 51 through 40 drawings could be difficult to correlate with what you saw in the sextant, though, because the constellations would rotate from what the picture showed, depending on time of night and season of year. And there'd be lots more stars visible in the sextant that were not shown in the drawings. So this is technical stuff that you had to learn to know celestial navigation. So I like it when smart people like Stefan find it. Michael Cole writes so much about celestial navigation in Zodiac Revisited. that there's something going on there. That's where I wish this case would go. People that really understand stuff like drafting and celestial navigation is so important. And Tony, you know this because this was Stefan was writing this back to you, to Tony, on one of our Facebook groups. It said, Tony, you're right. I don't know what role Richmond would play in this case, but be honest, but it seems like all these locations has a common factor, as in that they can be connected to the constellation of Cancer. When I noticed a similarity between the connected locations of the constellation sign, I just couldn't ignore it as a mere coincidence or fluke. The similarity to me is far too obvious and unquestionable. It would also give further credit to the notion that everything that the Zodiac did in terms of choosing the locations and execute the attacks was meticulously planned beforehand. Yes, the Zodiac referenced celestial navigation and the stars uh, when planning his attacks, when planning to do an attack at Lake Berryessa. The victims were random. The victims just had to be there at the right time. That could explain the voyeur at Lake Berryessa. Maybe those women he was considering attacking, but it was far more important for him the location and getting the day as close as he could to a particular day. This is what Stefan is saying here, and that's what Michael Cole talks about a lot in his Zodiac Revisited books. This is just stuff that you cannot ignore, and it's so important because you can so limit the pool of suspects to say how many of these guys had celestial navigation knowledge and drafting knowledge. I mean, you're talking about less than maybe 1 out of 1,000 would have had both these skill sets, drafting on top of celestial navigation. So, of course, Cheney's got both of those. That's why I'm talking about it. But this is things that people really need to see because this is what he's showing us. This is what he's showing his influences are, his training is. I mean, we can go on and on about which book or whatever, or Alfred Hitchcock. I now firmly believe he probably got this as the Zodiac speaking from Alfred Hitchcock speaking. But it could have also been from Batman and, being influenced by comics. Most people don't argue the fact that he was probably influenced by Tim Holt and Gun by Fire, by Gun, by Rope. I think that comes up in an Alfred Hitchcock episode too, something very similar to the Wheel of Death that comes up in the Tim Holt comic. But stuff that are specific skills like drafting and celestial navigation, possibly hunting, of course. When you're talking about the 408 cipher, and that's another thing that Stefan brought up that he didn't hear before, which I knew. When they decoded the 408 cipher, the one by Donald Hardin and his wife, Betty June, who went by the name Valerie, just as a little aside there. I don't know why she went by Valerie, but she did. But they're the school teacher and his wife that decoded the Zodiac's 408 cipher. Once they converted it to plain text writing, they knew that the Zodiac symbol represented the letter D. Of course, D's in Don, and Stefan said immediately he thought of Don Cheney when he read that. Like he did see that before, that the Zodiac symbol in the 408 did represent the letter D. So I love picking up on new stuff like that. So I wanted to read this piece from Cole. I know I've got it here somewhere. This might be it here. Okay, here it is. Probably part of this missing. It says the Zodiac Killer and Celestial Navigation. And this was on his blog years and years ago before his books came out. Actually, it says this article was originally published in June of 2006. So he was onto this early. It says, introduction. One particular piece of evidence in the yet unsolved case of the serial killer known as the Zodiac suggests that he was inspired not by astrology as commonly assumed, but rather by celestial navigation. The definitive reference book for the subject, Nautical Navigation, first published over 200 years ago, appears to tie together some of the concepts found within the persona of the Zodiac. On June 26, 1970, the Zodiac Killer mailed a letter accompanied by a Phillips 66 map of the San Francisco Bay Area. On the map, the killer drew the following symbol centered on the peak of Mount Diablo. Let's go back to that slide. Okay, that's the one on the right. Of course, that's the Zodiac Phillips 66 map, and he drew that compass rose straight over the peak of Mount Diablo. It says, Speculation as to the meaning of this annotated symbol. However, if we consider the following points of commonality, it is clear that the symbol is intended to be a derivative of a compass rose, an analytical figure used in the practice of nautical navigation, primarily on nautical charts. Of course, Don was training to be a navigator in the Air Force, but he also knew how to navigate boats. He was on a sailing team where he was a navigator, like racing sailboats. So he knew how to do both. But you use the same principles in celestial navigation for both boats or airplanes. It's the same thing. You're using the same sextant and the same principles. Both appear on maps. Both are constructed from graduated circles. Both graduated circles are numbered from 0. Both give primary emphasis to the lines associated with the 4 cardinal directions. Both have an arrow on the ray associated with the 0. The instruction on the Phillips 66 map reads 0 is to be set to magnetic north, the standard. And then part of this gets cut off. But this whole theme of celestial navigation goes all the way through Michael Cole's book series. Yeah, he well, unfortunately, Chris Ross Sullivan did get into the phone booth, and some poor man couldn't get out of the phone booth. But yeah, does anyone think Ross Sullivan, who was very mentally ill, could have pulled off something like this or had this background or could draft? No, of course not. He's comical. Tony, one interesting thing is the missing star spot on the map. That's a good point, Tony. Look more, Gary is a very common name. Look more into what I'm saying, middle or last name, but it's out there. I think you're talking about Yuba County 5, right, Mark? Because every time I hear Gary, when I hear Gary, I don't think of Gary Post. When I hear Gary, I think of Gary Mathias, of course. Bates was a rage killing. Yes, Bates was exactly. Bates was a rage killing, un-Zodiac like. Of course, the boyfriend did not match the DNA, but there could be DNA is not infallible. It's a great tool, but it's not infallible. You cannot just assume that DNA that came from the Bates killing absolutely was a murderer. He could have had an accomplice. When I go to the Bates thing, I go back to what was it that the boyfriend, and we all know who we're talking about, told Sherry's father at the restaurant. It's some weird comment. I can't remember what it was, but it was really a really strange comment. California, around 50 miles or so northeast of San Francisco, there's a small town called Paradise. Yeah, Paradise, California, with the Paradise spelling. Yeah, I've seen that come up quite a bit. Yes. Yeah, solar flare. Calculating your position correctly, you said a section is like how it works. And I would flunk that class in the first hour. It looks so complicated. How they did that? Of course, they had the airplane that had all that stuff on it. You know, where they with the train. They had one at Harlingen. I think it was a B-52. It was like the flying classroom, they called it, or something like that. They did have that. Hello. How are you? Could be. Let me put this back up. One of the experts on DNA that worked on the Bates case said the DNA was not stored correctly. That's interesting, Tony. Where did the DNA come from? I don't remember what the DNA was, like some hairs that were in the web of her hand. I think Ross said something different, but I remember Ken Maines talking about it, who did that one TV show where he was in the lab with it, said that the DNA, like it was like, you know, she was fighting off her attacker. Sherry Jo Bates put up a good fight. And it was, I think, in the web of her right hand, there were some hairs and some blood or something that they were pretty sure belonged to the killer. Which always brings me back to, if they had Zodiac DNA, or if it's from the 78 letter, wouldn't you immediately test it against viable DNA from the Sherry Jo Bates killing? That would be a no-brainer. But that's never been done, or at least it's never been announced. I'm pretty sure if it was a match, they'd come out and say, yes, the DNA found at the Sherry Joe Bates 1966 murder matches the DNA found from beneath the stamp or the outside of the stamp or the letter flap of the 1978 Zodiac letter that Arthur Lee Allen was ruled out on. Of course, the 1978 letter is not even considered authentic Zodiac. It's, the last one is the Exorcist letter in 74, but let's just say it could have been. And they have it, and supposedly that's their best sample. So when they rolled Allen out on, why wouldn't they test that DNA versus what they have on Bates? It's never done because they don't have it in Zodiac. They do have some DNA in the Bates crime, but like Tony's saying there, maybe it was not stored correctly. That's why they're not even going to bother to test the 78 Zodiac letter against what they have in Bates. I mean, because they know it's crap. Why even waste it? And every time you test DNA, it degrades it. So they probably like, why do we even want to risk degrading either or both samples by testing it against each other? Because they know that there's not a chance in Hades that the two are going to match. Zodiac loved PR and took credit presumably for Bates, but I think he was lying with Avery's tie-in, of course. And then how did Paul Avery first know about Sherry Joe Bates? It was not from a phone call. It came from a letter. It's called the Slow Boat to China letter. Of course, that's what tipped Avery off about the Bates possibly being a Zodiac crime, was the Slow Boat to China letter, which there's always an interesting tie-in. That was the Slow Boat to China was the name of the Rose Bowl float in 1963 from the engineering department at Cal Poly Pomona, called their float for the Rose Bowl the Slow Boat to China. And we know who was an engineering student at Cal Poly Pomona back then who worked on the float called the Slow Boat to China. But that could be a synchronicity, but I think it's interesting that was the name of their float that they built that year. Sure, Buck. I'll always do a GDW a question. It's not impossible, but I just don't think he would. I mean, if Gary Mathias set out, it would have never been anything planned. If it was something with his schizophrenia and he just acted up one night and it could have caused him to go off course, let's just say Gary gets it in his mind. Hey, something in his mind says, I got to go this far off course and run like a banshee up into the cold woods with all my friends because he's having a flare up with his schizophrenia. It's just it's not impossible, unfortunately, but it's highly unlikely. Everybody that was around Gary, he would have been enough on his medicine. He was looking forward to playing that game. I don't think he had anything to do with it. I really don't. I heavily lean against him. But unfortunately, it's not impossible that he didn't get some, just a flare up, they would call it. I can't remember what his stepfather would call it when, like maybe he had some form of flare up and just scared the heck out of everybody and just had it in his mind. He had to drive up into the mountain or force his friends to drive up in the mountains. Because of course, there's no doubt that Jack Madruga was driving his own car up there. It's one thing I can guarantee you that Jack drove his own car up there, not Gary, not somebody else. And of course, Jack and Gary were the only two that knew how to drive. The others couldn't drive whatsoever. They couldn't even try to drive. There are only two that could drive was Jack and Gary. Could Sandy have knowledge silent about Zodiac? You mean Panzarella? Jerome would agree with you. Jerome would tell you he did. I don't know. If you're talking about Panzarella, possible. It's possible. I know some things about Panzarella that his daughter wrote about him that she put on Facebook, and I only knew where to find it. And it wasn't nothing criminal. Don't get me wrong, but it was just stuff about how insecure he was. How insecure Sandy Panzarella was. He had these deep-seated insecurities. That doesn't make him a killer or have knowledge of Zodiac or Don Chaney or anything like that. But it's kind of interesting that a guy like Panzarella, who was extremely nice looking, extremely wealthy, and extremely successful, anything a man would, on the surface, you would say, what does a man want? He wants this beautiful wife. He wants this awesome career and be fit and athletic. Panzarella had all that and then some. I mean, Science Dynamics was extremely successful company that he later sold out to General Dynamics for a ton of money. But Science Dynamics was successful right out of the gate in the 60s. Computerized medical building. Panzarella had the vision of the future where all medical billing would be done through computers. So extremely smart guy. What was he insecure about? I don't know. But he was. No, I think of course it was sent to the Chronicle because of course it was addressed to Paul Avery. And that's one thing they didn't talk about much because of course in the Myth of the Zodiac, Duffy Jennings was in that show. I had no idea other than me and Horan who else was going to be in the show. The show came out. They don't exactly tell you, well, you're going to be in it with this guy. Because if I didn't shoot a scene with him, I didn't know they'd be in it. Of course, I knew Horan was in it. It was about his theory, but they should have asked Duffy Jennings more about the Halloween card because Duffy Jennings was there when Paul Avery got the card and opened the card. So that was a missed opportunity to ask him about that. I asked Duffy Jennings about it, and he remembered them getting the card, but I never thought about even asking for sure. And Richard will know why I would ask this. Was there a piece of Ballstein's bloody shirt in the Halloween card? Because as the movie would show you, there was, and we don't know, but it's an official line goes, no, the shirt piece was not in the Halloween card. But I think Richard wrote about the possibility that it could have been, and they just never admitted it. But if they did, why is the movie able to show that? Also, directly northeast of Double, Paradise Point Marina called California Delta. I believe Richard Grinnell once mentioned a letter bottle found there that was thought to be associated to Zodiac. I never heard that. But Richard, let me know about that bottle. I never heard about it. Schizophrenia can absolutely have sudden flare-ups. I used to work at the city mental health facility for a while and saw quite a bit. Yeah, Gary could have had a flare-up. There's no doubt. You can't rule that out. I mean, he had terrible schizophrenia. So maybe just it hits him on the way home from the game, but it had to get it pretty early because they went off course pretty early. So Gary gets through the game. He's able to go inside a Bears market and they can buy their snacks. And it had to have happened pretty soon after leaving Bears market if Gary has a flare up because the route the boys took was pretty soon thereafter leaving Chico to be able to wind up so off course like they did. So it's just a really strange bit of timing if that's the exact time that Gary chooses to have a flare up and then starts demanding that the car go that way. Like, no, go this way. Like, I don't know. It's just it's a really low probability in my opinion. I know that's a good question. I don't know. Everybody always thinks they have stuff that they haven't released. I heard from somebody the other day through the back channel that claims to be in the know that there is some stuff that Vallejo has that they haven't released. It's nothing. It's not a smoking gun, but it's interesting. I'll put it that way. And this person may be getting me a copy of a document that would be really kind of eye opening. Hopefully, I see it. Okay, you said the name, Mark. Now Fire Pixie did. It gets a double scream. No, I never lived it. I did not live in California at the time of the murders. I have visited a lot of the sites though. When I filmed the TV show, they flew me out there, so I got to go to a lot of the sites. I didn't go to Lake Berryessa. I wish I did. I don't know why I didn't. I just knew that exact spot would be hard to find, and I was pretty wiped out. But because filming all day, I was just so wiped out. I wanted to go back to Lake Herman Road. I went to Lake Herman Road during the day. I wanted to go at night just to see how dark it was, and I didn't even do that. I hope I can get back to the area, but I don't know what got if a friend of mine got me into it. Really, Herschel, if you're watching, Herschel got me into it because we were he was recording me. I found him on Craigslist, and he had like a podcast set up, and I wanted to do some voiceover stuff that I was playing with, and I found my buddy Herschel, and we just started talking, and he was really the Zodiac. I think he was a big fan of the hoax theory, horns theory, and he just brought that up. And I think I'd already done the Cooper Vortex with Darren Schaefer, my good friend. First podcast I ever did was Cooper Vortex. And Herschel said, what about Zodiac? Do you like Zodiac? And I knew a little bit about it, but he was like really into it. So it was Herschel. So I didn't even see the movie when it came out in 2007. I didn't even see the movie. I knew about the crimes, but I wasn't that into it. But I think it was my friend Herschel about, I don't know, 4.5 years ago. And we were recording together, and he said, "Hey, what do you think about Zodiac?" And then after that, I think I watched, his name was Arthur Lee Allen, and then I was hooked. Could be a big clue with the green card. There was something green going back to Harlingen Air Force Base. I can't remember. They call it a green tux. It was their the suits that they wore, and when they were doing their Air Force training at Harlingen, they called it a green tux. Let me go back to this. So yes, that's okay. This is I wanted to cover this. That was interesting. We blow it up. So does anybody know that is Lindsay Robbins right there in the middle with the bow tie and his two sons. Of course, Lindsay Robbins, one of the prime witnesses to the Zodiac Killer from the Presidio Paul Stein murder. And these are, I think the younger one is Paris, and the older son on Lindsay's right is Patrick, the one that came up with that story about his father going down to help Paul Stein and accidentally leaving his fingerprints on the cab, and then he kept it a secret and said, "Don't tell anybody until 2 years after my death or after his mother dies." And I couldn't find the obit or anything for his mother. Lindsay Robbins has been deceased for, I think, about 5 or 6 years. He died pretty young. I think he was in his early 50s or mid 50s. Here in that picture with his two young sons, I'd say he's probably mid 30s or so. But I don't know if he had cancer or if he had some kind of illness. But he did die pretty young. But that was the whole story that Patrick told after it had been certain time after Lindsay died. But I think it was more based on when Lindsay's mother passed away, who also lived in the Presidio, very wealthy family. You could tell by the way he's dressed. I don't know where their money came from, but they were a wealthy family. And this is a picture of Lindsay down here on the right. Some kind of race car. He's the one with his, hands cupped over his face. That's Lindsay Robbins, who was the young boy who was with his two younger siblings watching the assailant of Paul Stein get out of his cab and came out and was wiping the cab down. So that's him. And it says, he obsessed over his Winston Churchill books. The guy read a new book every week and constantly reminded me of it. Your generation doesn't give a damn about being well read. Please do yourself a favor and go read something. So I thought that was pretty interesting, really well studied guy. But I don't know why he would never just admit if he had gone down there and accidentally, trying to help Paul Stein would have left his own fingerprints there, but nothing else has been heard from. And where that whole story came from. So take it with Corky says take that story with a grain of salt about what Patrick Robbins supposedly said. But Lindsay was an interesting guy from what I can tell. But that's okay, we'll do that. That's for the end. There's Corky. I wanted to go back here. So yeah, great find by Steph. There's the greeting. I thought I had another slide in here, but I don't remember. So I don't know. I'll have to ask Stefan more if he looks into this more. But I'm going to pull this back up because it was. So you have Taurus, of course. I think Cheney was a Taurus. He was April 25th, 1934, and then Cancer. But Yeah, I mean, if you look at that, that is an exact match. If you do Diablo, Berryessa, Blue Rock Springs down the Presidio, I think it's a great find. I mean, I think that is being over the target when you get into celestial navigation in the Zodiac. It's just something that he's definitely making a huge nod to that. When was Colin Cowherd? That's funny. Is the audio still cutting out? I need to go watch it all. He gave me a shout out, which was huge. I mean, I can't believe I think that video's got like 3 million views already, or is it more? That's the most viewed uh Yuba County 5 video of all time. I think what did he talk? I don't know. I need to go back and watch it all. He definitely gave me a shout out, which was cool. I mean, when they show the book cover, that's the most you could expect to. And I'd never heard of the guy until he did that. The people on here were telling me about it. But I need to go back and watch it. Getting way behind on Yuba County 5 stuff. Yeah, but I do wonder about that. I do wonder what else they have. I don't think they have a smoking gun, but I think they have more that they have not admitted to. I got to look that up, Tony. It's going back, make sure. Didn't miss a comment up here. That's true. If ALA tried to hijack, he would have bounced. He would have absolutely bounced. Allen was a big boy. He might have been 250, but he just looked huge. No, DC wasn't a cancer. I don't know. Sean, when you watch this letter, let me know. I wonder if Gibson has similar cards in orange and green for comparison. I don't know. I mean, it's like you said. Why would there be two variants in color like that? The green looks like how it should have been made. I wish somebody could find another Halloween card. Oh, that's for sure. He was getting so much narcissistic supply from it. That's a good way of saying that. Look who's getting the truckload of narcissistic supply from doing. His name was Arthur Lee Allen. That is just as high as you can get is when he's holding court, basically telling you that he did it under the guise of Arthur told me so. Definitely no fans. I think I need to do some fasting. June 21st is July 22nd star missing. That is interesting too. I gotta look into that. I think that's exactly what it is, Tony. I think he's definitely sending a message there. I think everything he did was with a purpose. Somebody wrote this on Reddit about the Z32. It says, I took a stab at the Z32. I came up with something that looks like a celestial navigation coordinate of some sort. Using the 340 key, I came up with the following. And he's got all these letters and different variants. It says, I ran this through a Veneer decoder, and I believe the keyword is one of the following: YARAI. And it says in Hebrew, that means to fear. One reason I believe these are viable is that Franklin believed the white race to be Hebrew or the true Jewish people. He practiced using Hebrew calendar in his early days. I wonder if anybody's ever looked into Hebrew calendar with any of these dates. It seems using one of these keywords that the first few letters may come out to ALAT or ALONG, as in altitude or a longitude, celestial coordinates. I just can't figure out which one or how that works exactly. That's an interesting comment regarding the Z32, that it could be celestial coordinate, that could be celestial navigation coordinates. So there's a lot more to be, I think, to be found. Yes, 9:30. That is closing time. Yeah, that's all I have for now. Definitely tune in next week, same time, same channel. Definitely have some more new information coming out, and I've got a few emails that I got some new information on, but I'll put it out next week because I haven't had a chance to read over them all yet. But everybody have a great week, and if it's hot where you are, stay cool and dry. Thanks for watching. Oh wait, I gotta put this up. Thanks for watching.